You're watching Fugitive Deadeye, and October is upon us. So I've got some more spooky stories for you. Tonight's stories will be some Pokemon creepypastas which actually tie together with Lavender Town Syndrome. This is sort of the trifecta with White Hands, Buried Alive, and Lavender Town Syndrome. I would have included this with Lavender Town Syndrome had I known about the fact that they were all interconnected before. But nevertheless, here the two are. The original author of these stories is unknown, but the artwork typically associated with them is done by Queen Kami. Let's just dive right into it.
Known as Whitehand.gif, this sprite was scripted to appear as a Pokemon on the third floor of the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town. It's divided into 4 separate animations: an introduction, the Pokemon's cry, an idle, and 2 attacks. These attacks are unknown, but they are listed as Fist and Brutal. The animation has proven to be hazardous, but viewing the frames of the model has no adverse effects. The white hand in question is shriveled and decayed, with much attention to detail. Flesh is peeled back from the bone, and tendons dangle realistically from the wrist. For the first attack, the hand balls into a fist and swings forward. The brutal animation is missing several frames. The hand seems to open up, then cuts out. After a few seconds it reappears, closed again. No record has been found of these missing frames. The Buried Alive model, often referred to as its code, the Berryman script, was to be found on the final story of the Pokemon Tower, in what has now been replaced with the Marowak ghost. According to the scripts assigned to it, the Buried Alive model was intended to be the boss of the tower, once reaching the top floor. The following conversation would have taken place.
"You're here! I'm trapped! And I'm lonely! So very lonely! Won't you join me?"
After this, the battle would have been initiated. Once in the battle view, the Buried Alive model appears to be a decaying human corpse, attempting to crawl out of the ground. It's been programmed to have 2 white hands, a Gengar and a Muck. Strangely enough, a protocol for the Buried Alive's actions after it was defeated were not written. In the case of the player defeating him, the game would freeze. However, a specific ending was written by an unknown programmer upon losing the battle. In this ending, the Buried Alive was to have stated,
"Finally! Fresh meat!"
followed by several lines of gibberish. He was then to have dragged the player character into the ground surrounding him. The scene would finish with a typical game over screen. However, in the background, an image of the Buried Alive character devouring the player was to have been shown. Especially strange are the protocols after this scene. The cartridge was to download this image to a small internal memory contained in the Game Boy, overwriting the title screen that normally accompanied a Game Boy turning on. Instead, whenever it was started, the player would view this image as the sound staticmesh.wave was played. The intended purpose for this effect, unlike many of the other factors leading toward Lavender Town Syndrome, is unknown. Alright, there we have it. Now on to the review. There's not really a whole lot to talk about with these two. They're very short, descriptive things of supposedly cut content from Gen 1 Pokemon. Buried Alive especially is pretty dependent on Lavender Town Syndrome, and it's also pretty dependent on White Hand, so that you know what the hell a White Hand is when it says that he has it. White Hand itself, I'm pretty sure is a reference to, like, in Pokemon Red, where that guy asks you if you believe in ghosts, and if you say no, he's like, that's weird, there's a white hand on your shoulder. I'm pretty sure it's a reference to that. They're pretty fun little, like, lore things. I know there's some inaccuracies with, like, the file types and stuff, if you're, like, knowledgeable about how, like, Game Boy games work. But they're essentially just added stuff to build onto the lore of Lavender Town Syndrome. Much like Lavender Town Syndrome itself, there's not really a story or narrative. It's just alleged cut content that all kind of ties together to share one kind of story or scenario that supposedly was cut from the game. Again, not a whole lot built to it. I would say these are less of a story even than Lavender Town Syndrome itself, because it's just saying this is cut content. But, you know, it's a fun gaming urban legend. that I'm sure people believed back in the day, because lots of people believed a lot of creepypasta stuff. So they're fun, and again, I would have included these in my Lavender Town Syndrome reading, had I known that Lavender Town Syndrome was so interconnected with these two. Because I had heard all three back in the day, but it had been a long, long time. But anyway, yeah, not a whole lot to say. They're fine. They're pretty fun. Like I said, they're not really much of a story, but they are a fun urban legend, so I enjoy them. I do think they are iconic, and they are obviously part of creepypasta lore and history. And, you know, I do love me some gaming myths and urban legends. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good one. Toodles.